I want to welcome everyone to this afternoon's presentation of Public Leadership Institute's online trainings. This particular policy leadership webinar is to be focused on 50 model bills for states and localities. Ideas to move the needle forward in advancing opportunity and equality for everyone. My name is Dave Woodward. I am the National Network Director for Public Leadership Institute, and will be facilitating this session today. In addition to my work with PLI, I'm also a county commissioner and a former legislator, and very excited about this particular session specifically because how easy it takes a lot of the ideas and, that we all care about and packages in a way that we can all put in direct action, whether at a state or local level. Just give a little bit of background. Public Leadership Institute is a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy and leadership center that's really organized to help raise awareness around key issues, like many that we're going to be talking about today, of equity and justice, and to develop public leaders who will improve the economic and social conditions for all Americans. And we have a number of publications, which our next speaker is going to talk maybe a little bit more about, specifically about some model bills and ideas and model policies that everyone joining us today can play an active role, whether as an activist, as a elected policy leader, or advocate, to be able to move the conversation forward. You can get a lot of this information at www.publicleadershipinstitute.org, and encourage you to go to that website to not only stay in contact with us, but to be able to draw on the resources that are available to help you support your work. A few housekeeping matters before I introduce our main presenter of this afternoon. On your control panel, you should see a number of tools. We really want these sessions to be as value added as possible, to bring your voice and thoughts and conversation into the process. To that end, you should see on your control panel a hand icon. At any time during the presentation, you can click on that hand icon, and if you have audio capabilities, we'd love to bring your voice into the conversation. I know for others, it's easier to type questions in the question bar because you don't have audio capability where you're joining us. Type questions in the question bar, and at times that we pause for questions, we'll make certain that all your questions get answered. My email, dwoodward@publicleadershipinstitute.org. Is also on the screen there. Feel free to email me if you're having technical issues or follow up from today's presentation. Also, after the session, you will be invited to participate in a survey, specifically a survey about how what individual ideas that were lifted up that you have a lot of interest in. Are you interested in playing a role in helping advance that policy idea moving forward? I'll talk about that a little bit more later. You'd also should see on your control panel a document that you can download. This is the document that Bernie is going to be talking about over the presentation, and you should be able to have a copy of that on your control panel. So today's topic is 50 model bills for states and localities. Oops. And to that end, I'm going to pass this over to Bernie Horn. Bernie is a senior advisor for Public Leadership Institute, a policy leader, a communication director, someone who's been incredibly instrumental in pulling together these model policies so that everyone joining us today can not only get access to the full package of ideas that we can be leading at the local level to change the conversation and improve the lives of working families, expand opportunity and equality for everyone. Bernie, thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks very much.
Great. Take it away.
So what we're going to do is to talk about legislation that's in the most recent edition of the Progressive Agenda for States and Localities. But before I do that, let me just make a pitch for our website, publicleadershipinstitute.org, where you can find not just the Progressive Agenda, but you can find the Playbook for Abortion Rights, which has 29 different model bills, proactive model bills for states and some for localities, and a new book called Medical Equity Now, which is another 7 model bills concerning abortion. We also have our Voicing Our Values messaging advice. There's a brand new booklet, a 2016 supplement, that explains why we say that you should persuade in a certain way, why you should use a certain approach and use certain language. It's a short article, but it really talks to you about the effect of confirmation bias and negative triggers, and how to use how to approach someone who is persuadable and use language to start out in agreement in order to pull them over to your side. Explains why it's necessary to do it that way and how to do it. And then there's this progressive agenda, which is what I'm going to talk about. And what I want to do is to first make you aware that you can download a copy of the progressive agenda right now. Dave, can you explain that? Well, I'm going to go on to our website.
Absolutely. On your control panel, you should see this document attached, and so you should, if you click on that, you should be able to download directly onto your desktop right now. You can also always go to our website at publicleadershipinstitute.org.
So on this website, you get this, I'll pull it out like this. You get this web page which has this booklet as a PDF, and then it has the individual pages as HTML. You click on it and you get it in this format. And the thing about going to this format is that all the words that are highlighted in color on the PDF version are highlighted here as hyperlinks. So when you click on them, you get the model bill that does that. So, you know, whatever it is, here it is. So I'll go back to this. So what I want to do is to go through this book. There are 12 different topics, and I'll talk about a few bills in each topic, but I won't talk about every single bill. When you look at this book, you'll see that for every topic, on the left side of the page, there is a discussion of what would constitute a progressive agenda on that topic. What would be a progressive jurisdiction on that issue? And it gives you a broad discussion with a whole lot of hyperlinks to model legislation. What we're going to talk about is every time you open up to a different topic, the right side of the page is 4 or 5 or 6 specific ideas for legislation, explains the bill a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with civil rights and talk about these, and I'm really going to focus on the first 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on legislation that could be done at either the state or local level, because for those of you who are local officials or activists or staff members, if I talk about the state stuff, you're left out. So I'm going to focus on the local stuff, which can also be done at the state level. The first one up there is racial profiling. Now, any entity that has a police force, including a university, but any town, any county that has any kind of police force, should adopt its own racial profiling legislation and have legislation that requires the police to train their officers to recognize the difference between good policing and stereotyping. I mean, this is obviously Very, 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 very topical. The other thing that you could do is to inquire about your state or locality's use of force regulations so that you see whether they are applying them correctly. But the most important thing is that people not police based on stereotypes, and that the officers are trained to know what the difference is. So there's model bills in both of these areas, and I don't know what could be more topical unless your jurisdiction already is, has it covered. The next one is LGBT fairness, and this is basically an anti-discrimination law. There are anti-discrimination laws in most jurisdictions that apply to such things as race or gender or ethnicity or national origin, but they tend to not include discrimination based upon sexual orientation or gender identity. So over half the states do not have an LGBT fairness law. They haven't put discrimination based upon sexual orientation or gender identity into their law, but there are many local jurisdictions that have done so, and even some very tiny jurisdictions have adopted LGBT fairness acts. If you don't have the power in your locality to require fairness of individuals because it's preempted by the state, you can have an LGBT fairness law that just applies to your own employees. The state employees and contractors will not discriminate based on LGBT factors. At any rate, it's a very straightforward, and it's been done by the largest cities and states down to some very, very small places. The third one I want to lift up here is don't ask immigration status. Now, there's a lot of immigrants who are unauthorized, who are afraid to contact the state or local government, even when it's important for them to do so, because they're afraid that the state or local government is going to turn them into the immigration authorities. So you should adopt a law that says that our employees will not turn you in, or they won't ask for your immigration status unless required by federal law, which is a rarity, but there are some instances where they are. And then you publicize that you can come to our state or local police or enforcement or service offices, and you're safe. Because the reason why you can enact this law is not so much because our base wants to be in solidarity with unauthorized immigrants. Yeah, sure they do. But for persuadable voters, people who are not in our base, you just explain to them if unauthorized immigrants feel like they can't report crimes, or they can't act as witnesses for crimes, or they can't go to the occupational safety authorities or tell people about unsafe food practices, that it hurts all of us. That it's not just to protect them, it's to protect everybody. So I think it's a particularly great political bill and can be done on any level of government. I'll skip the next two because they're just for states and they're not quite as interesting. Now, all these consumer things are state only, and I'm just going to go over them, the first two, very quickly. Zombie debt is such an interesting thing, and Stephen Colbert, no, there was a recent late night talk show where the host bought up millions of dollars of uncollected debt. There's this racket of selling uncollected debt for pennies on the dollar, and then the buyer essentially tries to fool the debtor into recognizing the debt, even when under the law it's no longer collectible. But if you get someone to recognize it, to acknowledge the debt, then it can be collectible again. Anyway, this legislation puts rules on zombie debt collection so that the debts don't unfairly come back from the dead. And the next one is prepaid debit cards. You know, there are prepaid debit cards everywhere now. You know, grocery stores, every kind of store has these things. And the federal government has put protections upon them, and it's a lot better than it used to be. But states can still do three things. They can ensure that there's no expiration date. They can prohibit service fees, and they can allow customers to cash out when there's just a few dollars left on the card. Connecticut's a good example of a state that has adopted all three of these things. The cash out provision they adopted just this year. And what I'm going to do is, people should, if you have questions about any of these things, go ahead and alert Dave. Dave, you want to explain how to do that? Because if someone has a question about a specific bill, I would stop and just address that.
Sure. If people have questions, I mean, the same way. If you raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your control panel, or type questions in the question bar on your control panel, we'll be able to see those, and I will break into Bernie when that happens. Bernie, I'm related to when we were talking about the zombie debt. Everyone was jumping in. John Oliver. The whole,
right, everybody did that. Yeah, and it was a terrific demonstration of this scam that's going on. But yeah, John
people are engaged and did a very fantastic job of taking what might be an asset. Yep. So yeah, type questions in the.
Yep. All right. So type questions in or press the little hand at any time, and I will stop and take questions about any of these particular things. It's more fun if we're having a conversation rather than just me talking. Let me go to education. Now, these education policies, it really depends upon your own state and locality how education is handled. In some places, the county has a lot of control. In some places, the city has a lot of control. In some places, it's just the Board of Education that has control. And in all of these instances, the state could certainly mandate any of these things. But you may have an ability to do this on the local level, either through your state, county, or through influence you may have with the school board. So I'm going to talk about some of these things. The first one is about charter schools. There is, you know, a monumental increase in the use of charter schools, and the problem is that, generally speaking, in most states, they're not in the least bit transparent. You have no idea. You're giving them money, and you have no idea what they're spending it for. On the other hand, the public schools, you know it to the penny. So whether it's the state or whether it's another entity that controls the school systems, they should require transparency so that we know how our money is being spent. There's a tendency among charter schools to seek out geographic areas and types of students that are easier and cheaper to educate and to expel or count, or what they call counsel out. You tell the parents, you know, we're going to expel this child, so why don't you just leave voluntarily? the kids that are harder to educate or more expensive to educate, and especially if there's a per pupil way of getting paid, the charter school is trying to get the cheapest students. The cheapest students tend to be in elementary school, and they tend to be the ones where they have engaged parents rather than people who are in extreme poverty and that, one parent household and that there's problems in the household. At any rate, transparency will tell you a lot about whether the system is fair. The second one's pre-K for all. I'm sure you all understand that. It's just a matter of money. The third and fourth, the federal government requires standardized testing starting in third grade. And that's true even though the ESSA, the new federal law, takes some of the pressure off. But the federal government does not require testing in first grade and second grade. A lot of jurisdictions test then. I would not test. It's really inappropriate. And you can stop it because the federal government doesn't require it. Similarly, there's a problem, especially in major cities, of suspensions or expulsions of very, very young kids. And it's understandable that there are some kids that are extremely difficult to deal with, but we can't give up on kids that are so young. So there has to be a different way to handle it, and you can basically ban suspensions and force the school system to deal with them a different way, which it just has to be done. Going to local, the first four things here, going to environment, the first four things here are local. You can do these at the state or local level. Plastic bag fee or ban. So there's a lot of jurisdictions that are charging making, like grocery stores charge 5 cents for a disposable bag, and there are some that are like Hawaii, where they're just banning single-use plastic bags. It's a proven policy. It can be done at any level of government. The second one is climate change impact assessment. Now, there's not a whole lot that most small jurisdictions can do about climate change, but you can have a commission or committee or task force that is admitting that it exists. That you can create the conversation about the importance of admitting that climate change is real, and that the jurisdiction should study what they might need to do to prepare for it, especially if you are near the shore. At what point is the sea level going to rise enough that it affects you? Out storms, like the storm surge that devastated New York. It is inexpensive. It's an important issue. It can raise awareness, and you may be able to figure out some things that your jurisdiction can do that is good preparation. The third is only some localities could do this. It's really a question of what your current system is, but we want to encourage people to have residential solar energy, and there's a number of states or localities that have legislation on the books that makes it impractical to have residential solar energy. And we want to go the other way. So basically, this is to fix a problem if it exists in your state or locality. And the fourth one is green buildings. So what you want to do is to promote green buildings. This is especially when a jurisdiction is building new government-owned buildings, and other situations where you may do it through the process of subsidies or tax breaks for entities that meet green building standards. Under government performance, these are all state or local things that you can do. You know, there's this tremendous amount of privatization on all levels of government, and it's not necessarily the the cheapest or most effective thing. When there is a bid to privatize something, if they're paying people so little that those employees have to get government assistance, which is not all that unusual, then that should be counted. It shouldn't just be to find the lowest bid if the lowest bid means that the state or locality is going to have to spend more for social services. That makes no sense. So this legislation would create a more realistic competitive bid process that keeps in mind those other expenses that might occur. The second one is to raise standards for firms receiving government support. This is, you know, there are government contracts and there are government subsidies. And in both cases, the government should have minimum standards such as a living wage or requiring that health insurance be offered to employees. And in many cases, you can require that an apprenticeship program be part of some kind of construction project. The point is, if you're going to spend your money, spend it for something that's actually going to bring up your jurisdiction, not not create a bunch of dead-end jobs. Job piracy ceasefire is the third one, and this is really one of my favorites in the whole book. Jurisdictions spend all sorts of money trying to steal companies from other jurisdictions to move to their jurisdiction for the jobs, and this is expensive, and it's rare that the money you spend is worth the jobs that you get. But there is a solution, and that is to have a compact among jurisdictions, and this can be done on the state or local level, where you pass a law that says that if there's another jurisdiction that passes the same law, that your government is forbidden from stealing employees from the other government, so that if you had 6 different governments sign on, you couldn't steal from those governments. You could steal from those that don't sign on. But it's this agreement not to steal from each other, saves money, saves a lot of aggravation, and it's the way it should be. Now you say, well, that sounds like pie in the sky. Missouri passed such a law specifically directed at Kansas. Kansas ignored it for a while, but earlier this year, the governor has picked it back up, and he's trying to finalize an agreement with Missouri so that Kansas and Missouri don't steal jobs from each other across the state line. This is doable on any level. There's just no reason why not. And what's to lose? If you pass it and nobody else passes it, you didn't lose anything. The last one is online disclosure. You should disclose everything online that you possibly can. For one thing, it's a whole lot cheaper to just put it up on the website than to have than to pay employees to store and find things and copy things and get people to pay 10 cents a Xerox or whatever. It's easier to just put stuff online and then it's done. There's a good model on our website that comes from Montgomery County, Maryland, which is very, very intense disclosure. Moving to health. The first two are local or could be local. First one is to restrict e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes.
Bernie, can I just jump in there real
Yes.
quickly? I mean, we've got a
Yeah.
number of people coming back to. Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
And specifically around raising standards. I mean, a question that was raised, a few people are starting to ask questions around the scope of what's possible, basically. I mean, one person pointed out, could you add paid sick leave or leave policy for employees as a condition of public support? Another asked about preserving some public green space if some land is being given to a project or things like that. So, I mean, could you speak a little more into that? There seems to be some interest in what the full scope is of what the raising standards on firms receiving government support, what that means.
Yes, you can. Now, this particular model bill is very simple. It's living wage and medical insurance, health insurance. But absolutely, when you're on the local level, that's what you control. The state tends to control what private businesses can do, but you can control anybody who you are either having a contract with or giving a subsidy to. And it should be a provision of the contract. For example, there are all sorts of things that that are being done that should be banned, and you can do it for your contractors and your recipients of subsidies. Ban the box, make them stop that, or not allowed to do credit checks for the employees that they're hired. There are standards that you have for your own local employees. Apply them, make the contractors and subsidies follow those rules. So yeah, I would encourage, and the same thing is true of green spaces. I would really encourage this, because you definitely have this power, and it's not a power that I've ever heard has been taken away. There are jurisdictions that have done things and have had preemption by the state legislature, but I cannot think of a situation where the legislature has forbidden a jurisdiction from putting some language into their contracts.
Right. Yeah, I've heard it also referred to in some cases, maybe a broader appeal of community benefit agreements. And this is really pushing all the people who are joining us around the country today to think creatively. So this isn't just thinking about a contract for specific services. This is thinking about any tax abatement or foregoing taxes for a long period of time, granting access to public lands, the power of the purse and the leverage, particularly at the local level that you have to be able to do this, and arguably even at a greater level at a state level. To be able to do this, to advance these policies, potentially giving momentum to advancing some of these policies at a local level to build the stronger case for greater statewide action around some of these important issues, whether it's wage and benefit issues, environmental issues, and a whole host of other ones. Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That you have the power. It doesn't get used very often. Usually, it's just, who's the lowest bidder? You have the power. Use it.
Actually, I'm just jumping one more time, Bernie, because this is something that it comes up, and you might have a city manager or a county administrator or something running the day-to-day operation that very quickly come up to you and says you can't do that. And my experience, as a county official, and even in my state, elected leadership in other capacities, I'm amazed at how quick that some of these quote administrators show up and shut down these ideas, when in fact we definitely do. There might be some things we have to do in order to fully implement them. But I just want to say, you've got the power of the purse. Push these ideas forward. And this is an example when there's things that you want to do and you're getting pushback. reach out to Public Leadership Institute, and we'd be happy to evaluate those measures further and frankly direct you where you can get additional support to move those ideas forward.
That's exactly what I was thinking of saying is contact us and we will help you. Okay. So health, I was talking about e-cigarettes. So there's a lot of jurisdictions on the state and local level that have imposed workplace smoking bans or banned sale to minors. Basically, whatever you've got that applies to smoking, you can apply to e-cigarettes, and you probably should. End-of-life palliative care. This is something that is a state law, but there are some local jurisdictions that own or control hospitals, and it's rather, there's a lot of doctors that when they went to medical school, it was all about doing the maximum they possibly could, and there's a lot of people who at a certain point really need palliative care more than, I'm going to cure you. And so this is legislation to encourage that. I'm just going to mention the last one, even though this is really just state law. There is a new movement to go after prescription drug prices. Prescription drug prices used to be a really big issue before the ACA, and I worked on it quite a bit. And then it became less important because the way to get lower drug prices for people is to get insurance. And now it's coming back because, the ACA is done. So it is to try to create a situation that drives down unfairly high drug prices through disclosure. Vermont enacted a law this year, and there's a whole bunch of states that are right behind them. If you are at the state level, you really want to do this. This is, aside from the drug companies themselves, everybody's going to be on your side. Now, public safety, almost everything can be done at the local level, because if you have a local police force of any kind, you can apply this to them. Electronic recording of interrogations, it just seems to me this is a no-brainer, but it's not being done in probably most places. And that is that when someone's being called in for an interrogation, before they start talking, you turn on the camera and you keep the camera on and until the person stops talking, there's nothing left, you turn it off. This benefits both the person who's doing the talking and the police, because when there are disputes about what was actually said, that's a bad thing. The innocent need the protection if it favors them. The police need the protection if it favors them. And this is just a no-brainer. Now that we have cameras everywhere, there should absolutely be cameras in interrogation rooms. Now, the reason why I got involved in this is back in the early part of this century, there was a state senator in Illinois who made this his signature issue, and he worked really hard on it, and he was the first legislator in the country to pass such a bill through the legislature. And his name was State Senator Barack Obama. So this is a good topic. The second one is police cameras on police cars or uniforms. You know all about body cameras. They should be in your jurisdiction. The third is stun cuffs. Now, you may not know about these things, but there's jurisdictions where they own these things that are like tasers. They have this huge amount of electricity, a shock, but people wear them around their arm when they're in custody. This is after they're in custody. And so that it's supposed to keep them from misbehaving. This is a solution in search of a problem. handcuffs and when necessary, leg restraints work. The stun cuffs, which emit 50,000 volt shock, can and are abused, and it's essentially torture, and it's banned in Europe as torture instruments. You just shouldn't have them. And if you go to this page, you'll see some examples of how they've been abused. And the fourth one, the last one I'll mention here, is demilitarize the police. There was a program by the federal government where local police forces could get military equipment for free. And more than 8,000 local police forces did. And it's all sorts of stuff, from automatic weapons to heavily armored military vehicles, camouflage, combat fatigues, and night vision rifle scopes, and all sorts of stuff. You should ask your police force if they have this stuff, and if so, why, and under what circumstances do they use them, and where do they get stored so they don't get stolen by the wrong people, and how much does it cost to have these things around? Wouldn't it be cheaper not to have them? Because, aside from your SWAT team, which not everybody needs one, and you don't need a whole lot of equipment for them, you shouldn't have any of this stuff. Now I'll move to reproductive rights. This is usually a state issue, but there are a number of things you can do at the local government. The first one says Truth in Medicine, and that's a particular model bill that is it is a state thing, but there are two things that can be done concerning crisis pregnancy centers and are done at the local level. One is that that you forbid false advertising by crisis pregnancy centers. San Francisco has such a law. We link to it. It's a very good law. A second is to require unlicensed crisis pregnancy centers to put up a sign saying we're not licensed, because they look like medical facilities and they counsel women not to get an abortion, but they're not medical facilities, and so they should be required to disclose it. New York City requires that, and so does the state of California. The second thing here is prevent anti-abortion violence and harassment. There's a whole series of things that jurisdictions can do that have, if they have an abortion facility, they can require that protesters act in a certain way. They're just kind of standard legislation, and we list them. The third thing, the long-acting reversible contraceptives, is a fascinating program. California started this program in 2009, where they basically gave out IUDs to poor women who were interested in it. And the birth rate and the abortion rate for women aged 15 to 19 since 2009 in the state of Colorado fell by 50%. Some of it's because of this program, some of it isn't, but it's wildly effective because IUDs are incredibly safe and effective now, and there was a time when people shied away from them because of the Dawkins shield problem, but that was a long, long, long time ago. And just to encourage doctors to be aware and to make them accessible could have a huge advantage in your locality or state. And the last thing is, this can be done at both the state and local level, or at least the state level in many localities. Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which requires that employers who have pregnant women as employees, or women who recently gave birth, to have reasonable accommodations, workplace accommodations. Social services. I am going to just lift up the last one because this can be done anywhere. So an awful lot of social services are delivered by nonprofit organizations. An awful lot. And they get contracts from state and local governments, and they get grants from state and local governments. And the fact is that when you're a nonprofit and you get your money that way, you do not feel like you can complain to anybody. It's not, it's not wise. So if you know that things could be done better, or you could use some help, or you know that there's something fishy going on. If you're a nonprofit social service organization, you'd have to be very, very, very brave to say anything to anybody. And so they generally don't. This is simple. Just create an ombudsman office. Could be just one person, but someone who's in charge of making things easier for the nonprofits that are providing services to your community. And that person, on the one hand, is a place where people can come and complain or tell their concerns confidentially, and in addition, the ombudsman can proactively look for opportunities where the government can more efficiently get services from organizations. You could create simpler RFPs, easier reporting, streamline licensing systems, figure out whether there's some way to give discounts from through government purchasing, figure out whether there's maybe government office space is vacant somewhere that some nonprofit could use. These nonprofits are doing your jurisdiction a world of good. They are always struggling. A very small investment in an ombudsman or an office of ombudsman, I think, could really pay off. Taxation, these are all state things, and some of them are very, very complicated. I'm just going to go with the second one. So if you have tax expenditures, that is exemptions, deductions, credits that are on the books, create a sunset so that those things sunset every 5 years and you have to reenact them, because an awful lot of them are not good policy anymore. They may have been good policy 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when they were enacted, but they don't make sense anymore. If you try to just cut them out of the law one by one, it's politically very difficult. If you create a situation where they have to re-justify themselves, you're going to get rid of a lot of unjustified giveaways. This is the second to last category, voting on elections. And again, this is almost entirely state. So I'm going to go to the second one, protection from intimidation, which I think to some extent localities can do. There is some intimidation that goes on in some jurisdictions where people standing in line for the polls, that people are assigned to kind of say, you're not allowed to vote if you're on social services, or for that matter, voter suppression tactics like telling people that the election is the day before or the day after. It happens. It's surprising, but it happens. I believe that most localities could address that with this legislation. States certainly can. And the last topic is wages and benefits. Wage theft is mostly a state thing. You can ban credit checks by employers. Strangely, employers are doing an awful lot of doing credit checks for people who are attempting to get a job, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with whether someone can do the job or not. And there's a lot of them doing ban the box, or ban the box is about looking up people's criminal records. And ban the box legislation basically says in the opening round, don't ask people whether they have a criminal record until they get into the second round, and then you can ask to see whether it's relevant to the job. But in most cases, most criminal records are irrelevant to most jobs. So give these people a chance, because after all, our community is trying to lessen recidivism. We want people with a criminal record to have a job. Don't make it difficult for them. In both of these cases, even if you can't require that of your local employers because it's a state function, require it of your own employers, your own agencies, and your own contractors. And that's it. That's the whole book.
Unmuted here. We got a couple questions, Brandon, coming through. One is, how would you find if stun cuffs are being used in your local community or in your allowed in your state, other than asking directly?
Well, they're certainly allowed everywhere. I'm not familiar with any law that prevents their use in the United States, except if someone followed our model legislation. They're banned in Europe. Other than asking your police directly, it would have to be some advocacy organization that works with prisoners, maybe the public defender's office or some nonprofit that works with people who are in the criminal justice system.
Great, thank you. Joel asked the question, does the recent Virginia legislation on IUDs follow the same model outlined here in the 15 model bill publication?
I
was trying to find it. I was trying to do it all at the same time. And I couldn't. I didn't have the answer.
I don't know the Virginia legislation. State legislation?
And yes, which I don't know if he's referencing legislation introduced or passed. But we can definitely look out. I mean, Joel, we can circle back within. We've got, in fact, a lot of the reproductive justice I work. I mean, Bernie, you might want to, aside from what's captured here, there's an entire playbook of additional model policies to expand and protect reproductive justice in this country. We might want to make a plug for that. And Joel, we'll circle back with you and get the answer to that question.
If it's legislation that passed, I don't think so. I don't remember anything passing. If it's legislation that was introduced, yeah, it's probably similar to our legislation. I'm just going to go to our website here.
While Bernie's going to the website, if you have any other questions about things that were talked about, things that, even things that you might think that should be included or fit within the conversation. We didn't cover every single item, but there is an incredible host of resources that this Progressive Agenda Manual provides, a tool to support your work in advancing the values that we share. And Bernie's got it up on the website here.
Yeah, we do a great deal on reproductive rights. I don't see it, but doesn't mean we didn't miss it.
Right. And to see if there's any additional questions that people have. I mean, again, this is, I think, something that, I mean, if you have any experience like working with these issues, moving these issues forward, needing technical support, or where to go to get additional resources, Public Leadership Institute is designed to be the resource to actually to be able to help support you in that effort. Again, to be able to, I mean, no other place that you can get such a comprehensive list of ideas that is outlined in the Progressive Agenda. Again, for those who've joined us a little later, you should be able to download a PDF copy of the entire manual off your control panel right now. You can always go to our website, publicleadershipinstitute.org. It's on the website, and you can download it there at any time as well. Open up to see if there are any additional questions that folks have. Quiet bunch. Oh, here we go. So this is a question that I expected as well. What about gun control legislation?
Absolutely.
Gun safety. Yep.
I'm going to go to our model bills, and let's see what we've got. Well, I guess we took them off our website because there is a law center for gun violence prevention, which has the latest model bills, and we didn't want to duplicate them. Many years ago, I was the director of all state and local legislation for what was then called Handgun Control, Inc., and became the Brady campaign, and I was there when we passed the Brady bill and the ban on assault weapons, and we passed gun legislation in more than 30 states and more than 30 localities. The things are more difficult today. There is it is probably most jurisdictions are preempted from doing gun legislation other than states. The states have mostly localities from doing it. One thing that is often can be enacted is what's called the Child Accident Prevention Act, or the CAP Act, which requires that guns be stored safely, and that if if someone's injured, that the owner of the gun can be prosecuted. And if you pay attention to the news, it's very, 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 very common for children to be injured or killed by handling guns that they find in the home or in the neighbor's home. Small children don't understand semi-automatic handguns, and that's what people tend to have now. A semi-automatic handgun, when a round is in the chamber and you take the magazine out, people think that it's empty, but the round is still in the chamber, so that when you pull the trigger, the gun fires. I don't know how many dozens of children die that way every single year. So there is legislation that can be done at the state or local level on that. But as far as background checks for all gun purchases or bans on assault weapons or magazine limits, those have to be done at the state level, and it's difficult. The only thing I would add is that if you were a state advocate and you can't pass through the state, but you have a ballot initiative state, which is true in 25 states, if you can put a background checks for all gun transfers on your ballot, it will almost certainly win because it's favored by like 90% of Americans. Even if you can't get it anywhere in your legislature, a ballot initiative will win.
Joel, I mean, asking another question, Bernie, and this might be also an opportunity to reference the playbook. What are thoughts on proactive legislation for medication abortion access, particularly such as allowing RNs to prescribe and administer?
So there are advanced practice clinicians who are like nurse practitioners who have the right to prescribe medicine in almost everything, and well, they should, and they're trained for it. But in most states, probably about 38 states, they can't do it for medication abortion. This doesn't make any sense because medication abortion is safer than aspirin. It's safer than Tylenol, and it's way safer than Viagra. So it absolutely should be possible to for these highly trained professionals to prescribe medication abortion. Now, it can be done in various ways. It is possible that your health department or your attorney general can declare that APCs can prescribe medication abortion. It depends on the state and what the state law is, but it's been done in a few states. Otherwise, you may have to pass something through the state legislature, which we would certainly support.
And if folks have additional questions, people should feel free to type questions in the question bar, raise your hand if you have audio capabilities. We'd love to get your voice in this conversation. Here we go, actually. Jennifer's raised her hand, so hold on one second here.
I went to this webpage just incidentally because in our messaging materials, we go into some detail about how to talk about gun violence legislation. So that's under the message guide part of our web page.
Great. Jennifer, are you there? Hello? Jennifer? Oh, she doesn't have a mic. Oh, she typed a question too, so I'll go this way. It says I mean, the system thinks you have a mic. I apologize for that. And this is coming back again, Timmy, the gun safety issue. How does a state enforce CAPA, C-A-P-A? I should know what the CAPA means, Bernie, help me. Is there a requirement attached for gun safes or gun locks when purchasing a gun? To what scope do states have the ability to be able to advance this? Or maybe particularly at the local level, advance some of those things?
Yeah.
Child Accident Prevention Act. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Bernie did, of course.
all states can do this, and a decent handful do have such laws. Many localities could do it. It's how effective it is really depends upon publicity. That is, people have to know that this law exists in order for it to have an effect. You know, people who are storing their guns have to realize that if they don't store it right, that they can be prosecuted. When we passed this bill, the first state we passed it in was in Florida in 1989. And Florida was having a tremendous run of children being killed in accidents. It was about 18 or 19 per year, which is quite a lot for a single state. And the passage of the bill had a lot of publicity. The following few years, it was only about 7 or 8 children who were killed this way. So it wasn't that the law was so, it was the publicity about the law that people started to realize that they had to take care of their guns, put a gun lock on, or some other method of avoiding injury to children.
All right. We'll make one final call to see if there's questions about any of the ideas that are outlined here. Like Bernie's been talking about, that these are tremendous opportunities, to advance at the local and state level, to move the conversation forward and build momentum for greater action around the country around these things. It gives us an opportunity to inform and change the narrative around a lot of these topics. And definitely PLI is very interested in working with anyone who's interested in moving some of these policy solutions forward. So if questions are coming through, who to contact, I would urge you to go to publicleadershipinstitute.org as a resource entry point. You can reach any of us at PLI through that. Info at Public Leadership Institute, leaders at publicleadershipinstitute.org is a great place. You can contact me at dwoodward at Public Leadership Institute, and I can direct you to the appropriate person. This is something. This is a work in progress. We're only going to make measured gains in these areas if we not only get these ideas introduced, but start the conversation, persuading people to join us in this effort, and raising the consciousness of voters and the public at large around these ideas, and in doing so, create a more equitable and fairer world. So I don't think there's any other questions coming through here. This presentation is recorded and will be put up and you can get access via our website at publicleadershipinstitute.org. And I don't know, Bernie, if you have any closing remarks, but I want to thank you for taking time to go through this publication, and thank you everyone across the country for joining us.
Thank
Bernie,
you,
I'll give you
Dan.
the final word. All right.
That's all. Thank you very much.
That's all. Bernie's been talking the whole time. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Please use this publication. Please give feedback, and keep the ideas coming. This is a compilation of ideas to expand opportunity and equality around the country at the local and state level, and it's an ever-evolving tool and document, if you will. So keep us posted on what areas you may be working on, what areas, ideas that you have to strengthen and increase, or new ideas to bring to these model policy ideas. And we look forward to working with you. Until next time, thank you again, Bernie, and thank you, everybody. Take care.